In late October, when the nights grew long and the wind whispered through empty streets, Alex Harris began noticing something unsettling about his phone. At first, it was only a slight disturbance, a static hum at odd hours that he dismissed as interference. But soon the disturbances evolved into something far more eerie. It started one night at 2:13 a.m. Alex was trying to sleep in his small apartment in a quiet suburb of Columbus when his phone vibrated on the bedside table. Groggy, he glanced at the screen only to see an incoming call from an unknown number. The caller ID read simply, in stark white letters on a black background. Reluctantly, he answered. A deep, modulated voice spoke slowly. Good evening, Alex. You are required to listen. Alex's heart hammered in his chest. He stuttered a greeting before the line went dead. The call lasted exactly 17 seconds, and there was no voicemail. At first, he believed it to be a prank, a mistake or an overzealous telemarketer. But as nights went on, the calls continued with unnerving regularity. Every night at varying times between 1:30 and 3 a.m., the same mysterious number would call. The voice always sounded calm yet detached. Sometimes it would merely say his name, other times, it recited fragments of conversations he had had earlier that day. One night, as Alex lay wide awake in bed, the voice said. I know what you hid behind your smile, Alex. That was too personal. It was impossible for a stranger to know. Over the next few days, Alex tried to trace the number with no luck. He contacted his service provider, but they explained that the number was untraceable, a spoofed line. In desperation, he turned to online forums, searching for others who had received similar calls. On a popular local message board, he discovered a thread titled Midnight Caller, in which several users described identical experiences. One user, Moonlit47, detailed that after receiving a call, they had found cryptic notes tucked under their door, with the same chilling phrases. The calls began to affect Alex's life. He started losing sleep, and his once bright demeanor turned cautious. He installed call recording apps and even set up a secondary phone line, but the calls persisted. One particularly cold November night, after another disturbing message. You cannot hide your truth, Alex, he resolved to confront the mystery. Alex decided to record his surroundings. He set up a small camera facing his front door and another by his phone. That night, he sat up in bed, eyes fixed on the phone waiting for the inevitable ring. Around 2:47 a.m., the phone vibrated. The screen lit up, and Alex's camera began recording. The voice came through again, but this time, after its usual cryptic greeting, there was a long pause. Then the voice whispered. Look behind you. Frozen, Alex turned slowly. In the reflection of his darkened room, he thought he saw a silhouette near the window. The video recorded a dark shape lingering in the shadows outside. His heart pounded as he checked the footage. The image was grainy but undeniable, a figure in a long coat standing motionless in the darkness, watching. Desperate for answers, Alex reached out to a friend in law enforcement, Detective Sarah Mills, who specialized in cybercrimes. Sarah agreed to review the recordings. After hours of analysis, she said, there's nothing technically wrong with your equipment, but the phenomenon you're describing is very unusual. I can't say it's paranormal, but I've never seen anything like it either. Sarah suggested setting up additional security, motion-activated cameras, a doorbell camera, even infrared sensors. Alex installed everything. For a week nothing happened. Then, one night, all devices triggered at once. The doorbell camera recorded someone approaching his door. The intruder was dressed in dark clothing, face obscured by a hood. The figure pressed a button and then retreated quickly into the night. When Alex reviewed the footage, the timestamp matched one of the midnight calls. The unknown number had called precisely at that moment. Alex's fear escalated. He began researching similar cases and discovered a legend that dated back decades, about a midnight caller who appeared to those harboring dark secrets. According to urban lore, the caller was a former detective who had died under mysterious circumstances and now sought to expose the hidden truths of his targets. The theory suggested that if you received a call, it meant you had something you were trying to hide, something your soul could not escape. Alex recalled small, seemingly insignificant events from his past, an argument with his estranged father, a secret he had never confided in anyone about his role in a minor but unresolved incident during his youth. The thought made him shudder. Had his subconscious, or something darker, brought this curse upon him? Desperate for closure, Alex decided to return to the message board and connect with Moonlit 47 again. Together, they compiled stories from others who had experienced similar phenomena. One user claimed that after receiving multiple calls, they had confessed their secrets publicly and the calls stopped. Another said they sought therapy and the calls gradually faded away. The pattern was disturbing. These were all people with hidden regrets or unresolved past events. Feeling cornered by his own guilt, Alex reached out to his estranged father. They had not spoken in years, but the call from the midnight caller left him no choice. In a long, tearful conversation, he confessed the burden of his past actions, his failures, and the shame he had hidden behind a facade of normalcy. That very night, Alex's phone remained silent. The calls stopped for almost a week, a temporary reprieve that gave him hope. But just as life seemed to be returning to normal, one final call came. In the dead silence of a frigid December night, as Alex sat alone in his darkened apartment, the phone rang. He answered immediately, expecting the familiar voice. Instead, the voice said, with an almost tender finality, "Your secret is no longer yours alone. It has been shared with the world." There was a click, and then nothing. The next morning, Alex's social media exploded with messages, posts, and confessions. Strangers from across the country claimed that details from his private life, the very secrets he had hoped to bury, were now trending online as if revealed by an anonymous source. News outlets began picking up the story of a midnight caller who unmasked hidden sins. Alex's life was forever changed. The calls had stopped, but their impact echoed in every corner of his existence. He was left wondering, was the midnight caller a supernatural reckoning, or had his own guilt turned him into a magnet for public shame? As he tried to rebuild his life, the chilling memory of that final call lingered, a constant reminder that some secrets cannot be kept forever. In a bustling city where skyscrapers cast long shadows over aging brick buildings, Emily Parker was excited to start a new chapter in her life. Having just landed a new job in downtown Atlanta, she moved into an old apartment complex with a storied past. The building, constructed in the early 1900s, was full of character, or so Emily thought. Her new apartment was number 13. From the moment she signed the lease, whispers about the cursed unit circulated among neighbors. Some said it was haunted by a tragic spirit, others claimed that tenants who lived there never stayed long. Emily, a pragmatic woman with a love for history, dismissed the rumors as mere superstition. During her first few nights, everything seemed normal. The building creaked and groaned in the quiet hours, a natural reminder of its age. But soon, strange occurrences began to disrupt her peace. At exactly 3:15 a.m. one night, Emily was awoken by a soft tapping on her bedroom window. Thinking it was a branch swaying in the wind, she ignored it. The next morning, however, she found a faint handprint smeared on the glass, an imprint that looked too human, too deliberate. The disturbances escalated quickly. Objects in her apartment would shift from their usual positions without explanation. Her favorite mug, once on the kitchen shelf, was found on the floor, pictures on the walls would tilt, and lights would flicker inexplicably. More unsettling were the sounds. At times, she would hear indistinct whispers echoing through the halls, and one night, a soft lullaby played faintly from the corner of her living room, a melody her grandmother used to sing. Determined to uncover the source of these phenomena, Emily began researching the history of apartment 13. At the local library, she discovered that nearly a century ago, a young woman named Margaret Ellison had lived in the unit. Margaret was known for her kind heart and gentle manner, but she had died under mysterious circumstances. Official records indicated that she had been found in her apartment, lifeless, with no clear cause of death. Rumors at the time spoke of a lost love and a forbidden secret that ultimately led to her demise. Emily grew fascinated and heartbroken by Margaret's story. She began to feel a strange kinship with the long-departed tenant, as though Margaret's soul had been trapped in the apartment, longing to be heard. Late one night, unable to sleep, Emily sat on her couch with a notepad, writing down her thoughts and feelings as she tried to connect with Margaret's spirit. As the clock neared 3:15 a.m., the time of the mysterious tapping, the air in the room seemed to grow colder, and a faint, almost sorrowful voice whispered, "Help me." Emily's heart raced. Was it her imagination, or had Margaret truly reached out? Trembling, she repeated softly, "I'm here. I want to help." The room fell silent, then the whisper returned, louder this time, "Remember me." The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. Over the next several nights, the communication grew more intense. Emily started recording the sounds with a digital recorder, and upon playback, she could hear clear fragments, a name, a date, and a plea for forgiveness. One particularly eerie recording revealed Margaret's voice saying, "I never meant for it to end this way. Please, let me rest." Emily shared the recordings on a local forum dedicated to haunted locations, where many residents recalled similar events from their time in the building. Determined to bring closure to the restless spirit, Emily arranged a small séance with a local medium. On a chilly December evening, in the dimly lit common room of the apartment complex, she, along with a few brave neighbors and the medium, gathered around a table. The medium, a solemn woman named Rebecca, closed her eyes and began to chant softly. As the session progressed, a sudden gust of wind swept through the room despite the closed windows, and the lights flickered violently. In a trembling voice, Rebecca spoke, "Margaret is here. She is mourning, and she seeks the truth." The medium revealed that Margaret had been the victim of a terrible injustice, a love affair forbidden by her family that ended in betrayal and a tragic accident that was covered up by those in power. Her spirit had remained in apartment 13, bound by unresolved sorrow and anger. The revelation sent shockwaves through the group. Emily felt both empathy and a deep responsibility to honor Margaret's memory. In the days that followed, Emily gathered every scrap of information about Margaret. She contacted local historians, visited old newspapers, and even reached out to distant relatives of the Ellison family. Piece by piece, a story emerged, a tale of a young woman whose life had been cut short by societal constraints and familial greed. Determined to set things right, Emily organized a small memorial in the apartment's common area. With the help of neighbors, she arranged a candlelight vigil and read aloud the story of Margaret Ellison. That very night, as the candles flickered in the darkness, the disturbances in apartment 13 subsided. No more ghostly lullabies, no more unexplained taps. In the quiet aftermath, Emily felt a profound sense of peace, as if Margaret's spirit had finally been released from her eternal burden. Though the rumors of the haunted apartment persisted, many who had lived there after that night spoke of a gentle calm, as though the building itself had been cleansed of its tragic past. For Emily, the experience was life-changing. She had confronted a century-old sorrow, given voice to a silent tragedy, and in doing so, had found her own strength. Apartment 13 became more than just a place to live, it became a memorial, a reminder that every soul deserves to be remembered and set free. On a rain-soaked night in early summer, Michael Thompson was driving home after a long day at work along the desolate stretches of Highway 17 in rural Virginia. The road, lit only by the intermittent glare of his headlights and occasional streetlights, wound through thick fog and overgrown fields. Michael, a pragmatic man with a steady routine, had always been cautious on these isolated roads. But nothing could have prepared him for what was about to happen. As he drove along a lonely stretch of highway, he noticed a lone figure by the roadside, shivering under a faded umbrella. The figure, a young woman in a worn jacket, looked desperate and vulnerable. Compelled by a mix of concern and the ingrained habit of offering help, Michael slowed down and pulled over. He rolled down his window and asked, "Do you need a ride?" The woman hesitated for a moment before nodding silently. Michael opened the door, and she climbed in, her eyes downcast, almost as if she wished to vanish. The silence in the car was heavy. Michael tried to make polite conversation, asking her name. She replied in a soft voice, "Sarah." Her answer was curt, and her gaze remained fixed on the rain streaking down the window. As they drove, Michael noticed that Sarah's presence seemed to absorb the warmth of the car. The radio, which had been playing a familiar classic, suddenly switched to a static-filled channel, and the temperature dropped. Michael glanced at her in the rearview mirror, her expression was blank, and there was an eerie stillness in her eyes. About 20 minutes later, as they neared a remote exit, Sarah abruptly asked, "Can you stop here for a minute?" Michael pulled over on the shoulder, and Sarah got out. He turned off the engine and stepped out, calling out, "Hey, are you all right?" But she didn't respond. Instead, she walked a few yards away toward the tree line, disappearing into the murk of rain and fog. Puzzled and a bit concerned, Michael stepped out of the car to look for her. The area was eerily silent. There were no footprints in the soft mud, only the faint outline of where she had stood. When he reached the spot, Michael's heart pounded in his chest. The air felt unnaturally cold, and the darkness seemed to press in on him. He called out, "Sarah," but received no answer. Returning to his car, Michael noticed something odd. On the back seat lay a small, worn scarf, a scarf he hadn't seen before. It was a delicate, pale blue fabric, frayed at the edges, with a subtle pattern he recognized from old family photos of local legends. Michael's mind raced as he remembered a story his grandmother once told him, the legend of a hitchhiker who vanished on that very highway decades ago, a young woman who was said to have died tragically in a car accident, only to reappear and disappear, leaving behind clues of her sorrow. With trembling hands, Michael examined the scarf more closely. It had a tag with the initials, SR, embroidered on it. Searching his memory, he recalled an old newspaper article about a young woman named Sarah Robinson, who had perished on Highway 17 nearly 30 years ago under mysterious circumstances. The details were hazy, a night of heavy rain, a lost love, and a promise never fulfilled. Determined to find answers, Michael drove to the nearest town and visited the local library. He dug through archived newspapers and eventually uncovered the grim tale of Sarah Robinson. According to the articles, Sarah was a college student whose life had been marked by tragedy. On a stormy night much like the one Michael had experienced, she had been picked up by a kind stranger, only for her to vanish without explanation shortly after. Over the years, numerous reports had emerged of a ghostly hitchhiker along Highway 17, always appearing on rainy nights, always leaving behind only a token of her presence. Armed with this knowledge, Michael felt a mix of dread and compassion. The next time he drove on that road, he kept his eyes peeled. That night, as rain hammered down and fog swallowed the highway, Michael noticed a figure standing by the roadside. His heart skipped a beat, he recognized the silhouette immediately. As he slowed and pulled over, the figure, once again, appeared. This time, however, Michael was ready. He watched from the car as the young woman, dressed in a faded coat, hesitated before stepping inside. But before she could settle, Michael noticed something uncanny. In the reflection of his rearview mirror, the woman's features flickered, as if not fully present in the physical world. When Michael finally reached the town's limits, the woman whispered, "Thank you," in a voice that sounded both grateful and sorrowful. Then, as abruptly as she had appeared, she vanished, leaving behind the same lingering chill in the air and an empty seat in the car. For weeks after, Michael was tormented by the memory of that encounter. Neighbors spoke in hushed tones about the ghost of Highway 17, and local urban legends were reinvigorated by his story. Michael tried to convince himself that it was simply a tragic case of mistaken identity, a mass delusion born from the power of local myth. But every rainy night, every lonely stretch of highway, the image of Sarah Robinson's haunted eyes returned, a spectral reminder that some souls are bound to this world long after death. Though Michael never saw her again, he kept the blue scarf as a memento. In quiet moments, when the wind howled and the darkness crept in, he could almost hear her soft voice, a reminder that she still lingered on that fateful road, a vanished hitchhiker whose story was etched forever in the memory of those who dared to ride with her.